Guys, when it comes to lead quality, if there was one thing that I could have every company in the country do, it would be setting and defining what a qualified lead is one time, doing it very, very clearly, and making sure that everybody's on the same page about it. Because the facts are, if the definition of a kind of qualified lead at your company is very, very fuzzy and it's not clear, then your reps can kind of play this numbers game where, you know, they set a bunch of appointments, they kind of push this vanity metric of kind of set rate super high, but you end up at the end of the month with a ton of kind of gross sets that don't turn into demos, and it ends up you kind of eroding into your margins, right? So on this video, we'll talk about how to go about, you know, setting that kind of definition, and actually why it's going to help your entire sales process by just doing this one very simple thing. So to kind of start with the problem of you know, having kind of unclear definitions of a qualified lead, it means that your reps are in a position to be able to, you know, set anything that says yes. And they do that to be able to hit a quota. Again, at a lot of companies, I've seen, you know, you have to hit a certain amount of sets per month and you kind of get some sort of a bonus, right? And the problem with that is that on paper, you know, sets look good, but in reality, you know, what we've seen is that a lot of companies will have what we call gross sets. So if you don't know what that means, a gross set is an issued appointment that doesn't actually, you know, hold and turn into a demo, right? And the problem with those is, you know, you're actually losing money on those deals, because whenever you send a rep out to a house, let's say you have an NSLI, so a net sale per lead issued of $2,000, that time that was spent at that house that didn't close, if they had gone to a 2-leg appointment, it would be $2,000 worth of revenue. Again, that could be 10 appointments, you have a 10% close rate, and your average deal size worth $20,000, right? That means that each individual, you know, kind of qualified lead that you go to is worth $2,000, and you need to make sure you're factoring that in whenever you're kind of setting those sets, right? So again, let's talk about how we should go about trying to, you know, kind of tighten that process up. So the first thing that I always do whenever I come in to coach a company is that we need to set the kind of culture in a place of clarity and understanding what a qualified lead is, right? It needs to be written down, and you need to train your reps on specifically what that is, right? Now, this process isn't about making this kind of like super tight gate where, you know, nobody can get through it for the sake of being like, hey, you know, we defined a qualified lead. But what we need to make sure is that we have consistency across the board, so that everybody across the company, from the people in the marketing department to the people on the set team to the actual in-house sales reps, are all on the same page and playing the exact same game, right? Because if we don't have understand what that is, then, you know, marketing can get, you know, super crappy leads through. Let's say if you have a paid ads team, your reps can set super crappy leads, and the sales reps are the ones that have to go out and waste their time, you know, picking up these kind of inflated success metrics that the rest of your team are kind of pushing through by literally just having crap go through your calendar, right? And the reason why we set things out like that is because a sale is the end goal, right? And before every single sale, before most sales, almost every single sale, there's going to be a demo, right? If you guys are closing deals without running demos, then please come and let me know how you're doing that, right? But with that being said, it's important that we pay our reps based off of demos, right? It's going to be able to make sure that we have kind of incentive alignment, right? The reps are incentivized to do what we need them to do to close more deals, right? Whereas if you pay on kind of sets alone, what you're going to see, trust me, is you're going to have tons of appointments, but your kind of no-show rate or your one-leg rate is going to be very, very high compared to kind of industry standards, right? Now, that's not to say, though, that the kind of process of just paying on demos alone is perfect. If you do that, you know, we have found that reps will kind of dodge those kind of more difficult conversations with those more challenging prospects. But we've spoken about this on different videos, and we'll talk about it in the future. There are certain things that you can do and certain incentives you can put in place to kind of have this kind of balanced effort where we can kind of get the best out of our reps. But that kind of, you know, financial alignment is a very, very important part of that. And when we apply this kind of standardized kind of single criteria of what a qualified lead is to our different lead sources, what we're going to see is that it's very important that we have the same standard of a qualified lead across the different channels, but we need to make sure that we're calibrating kind of expectations to our reps as to, the level of difficulty of, either, qualifying that lead or kind of finding that lead across, the channel. For example, you're far more likely to have a qualified lead if you're getting inbound PPC than you are kind of calling age leads, right? So we want to have the same scoreboard, but we don't want to kind of grade the results for the kind of the different channels, right? If we hold our age leads to the same standards as our inbound, you're going to get frustrated reps, and in most cases it means they're going to stop doing the outbound calling they need to do, which is actually going to be generating additional revenue for the company if you do it correctly. So now that we understand what kind of needs to be done to kind of set that standard and make sure that everybody's on the same page, there needs to be a way to actually enforce it, and making sure that everybody in the company is actually doing what we want to say. And that comes from repetition and kind of collecting proof, right? So again, we want to be able to train our reps, to be able to identify the correct criteria, and to be able to kind of walk them down the right path to be able to qualify them correctly. We want to make sure that we're listening to calls every week, a minimum of 6 calls, right? It means that we kind of keep our setters in check and make sure they're following our protocols. One thing that I don't see anybody or a lot of companies doing is mystery shop yourself, right? If you're an owner or you're a marketing manager, submit a form with your own number and get them to call you, or call into the office and pretend to be a customer. If you can go through that process, you can actually see in real time, are my reps actually doing the process that we say, and how does it feel to be on the receiving end of this process, right? And if we do these things, then over time, a qualified lead is going to become kind of part of your kind of reps kind of muscle memory. They're going to know exactly what that looks like and the process to go through, rather than it kind of being this kind of like vague opinion-based thing as to, I thought this guy was qualified, or I didn't think he was qualified because he asked me a couple of questions I didn't like, right? It's important that we set that standard, we train it, and it becomes kind of muscle memory. So from an operator perspective, I need you guys to stop asking the question, hey, how many appointments did we set this week, right? How many appointments did we book? And start thinking about, hey, as a company, did we protect our calendar with our definition of a qualified lead, right? Are our kind of incentives and our scripts and, our quality assurance process all kind of put together to point in the direction of making sure that we're issuing demos successfully, right? If the answer is yes to that, then it means that when you put money in to the marketing machine, you're going to be able to get predictable dollars out, because you're going to set consistent demos as long as you have, decent lead quality, because you have those processes in place, right? But if the answer is no, unfortunately, whether you see it on a P&L sheet or not, your margins are 100% going to be leaking through those gross sets. Again, every time your reps go out to a meeting that isn't qualified, you are wasting dollars that don't come out on the P&L sheet. But if they had gone to another house that was qualified over the course of a month, you would see a huge increase in your kind of revenue numbers. And with that said, talking about how you can increase your revenue numbers, oftentimes, actually implementing these type of practices into your company can be quite difficult, especially as an owner operator who maybe has a ton of stuff going on, which is why we have our own call center that, we can implement our reps a lot faster and significantly cheaper than you'd be able to do so in-house, whether that's handling your full call center, whether we do after hours and weekends, or we answer your missed calls, or we reactivate some old leads, right? There's tons of different ways that we can help. And if you are interested, feel free to reach out. Again, across the board, we found that people who implement this stuff or work with us get to see more money with the lead flow that they're already generating. So whether you again want to work with us or you want to just keep watching, make sure you follow the page. I drop videos like this every single week. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.